When you subtract hours, you multiply output. How flow research can make everything in your business and life work better. I'm sure you're busy. Hardly anyone I know isn't these days. Even retirees tell me there's not enough hours in the day. What if I told you that I had a vital task to add to your schedule that would take you an hour or two every day, 7 days a week, for the next couple of months, and you had to fit it in without breaking anything else in your life? It sounds impossible, right? I thought so too. Yet that's basically the situation I found myself in recently, and it's taught me a heap of lessons. I'd like to share a few of them with you today. Applying these will directly impact how much you achieve in practice and in your life. My intention here in the Foot Brain Connection isn't just to teach about feet, fascia, and neurology. It's to pass on insights I've learned during my 24 years as a chiropractor to help you grow your practice, your profits, and your personal power. The truth is, all three of those things are intrinsically linked. You can't change any without affecting the others. If that's not your cup of tea, no worries. Maybe check out episode 7 or episode 3 where we talk about arches. For now, let's get into it. As you might know, my dad had some pretty significant health challenges lately. He spent 3 months fighting in the hospital before sadly he passed away a few weeks ago. It's a heartbreaking loss for my family. He was an inspiration in my life, and I'm going to miss him every day. What I'm grateful for is the life we've lived together, the wisdom that he lived out and passed on, and the time that we've got to spend together over the last few months. Almost every single day, I was in the hospital there with him, supporting him, adjusting him, and celebrating the experiences that we've shared. I know some of you have been holding him in your prayers and thoughts. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Sometimes the most difficult experiences teach us the most. Although the learnings that I've received apply to almost every aspect of my life, and they're continuing to unfold in a major way. But today I want to look through the lens of productivity, flow research, and how to actually create a meaningful, effective life. Like everybody else, my life's busy. I run 2 businesses, I have 2 beautiful boys, a wonderful wife, I have family around the world, and amongst all that, I still manage to maintain a reasonably fit, healthy body and mind. If you'd asked me 2 months ago to find an extra 2 hours every day, I'd have told you it was flat out impossible. Yet that's what happened. Not only that, but the other important areas in my life haven't fallen apart. I feel like my business, my relationships, and my commitment to health and family are stronger than ever. So how did that happen? Let's talk about work compression. This is a concept that I learned from Rian Doris, co-founder of the Flow Research Collective. I've been following the flow research for years now. As a rock climber and a snowboarder, I'm intimately familiar with that state and the incredible things that you can achieve whilst you're in it. By the way, I don't have many photos from my rock climbing days. They were before their days of digital photography. But here's one, purple hair and all. Over the last few years, I've been fascinated by how these principles apply to achieving the seemingly impossible in the areas of human performance, business, and life. In fact, one of my 2 key words for 2026 is flow. This is my central theme for the year. It's the lens that I'm viewing everything through. And in case you're wondering, this year I picked 2 words instead of the usual one. The other word's exponential. Rian contends that when you subtract hours, you multiply output. It sounds completely counterintuitive, yet I'm finding it to be true. Rian tells the story of his friend who borrowed millions from family and friends to launch a startup company, began getting traction, and then he contracted Lyme's disease. His body and his brain almost completely shut down. He was battered with crippling fatigue, headaches, and brain fog. Suddenly he found himself reduced from working 14 to 16-hour days down to barely being able to manage 2 hours a day. And with everything on the line, not just his own life savings, but everyone else's that he knew too. So failure wasn't an option. So he began stripping away every less important task. That doesn't mean they were unimportant. It just means that they weren't the most important. And his productivity went through the roof. He could physically only work for 2 hours a day, but during those 2 hours, he was deep in flow, producing 10 times his normal work output. One of the key factors in implementing this in your own life is understanding flow triggers. Researchers identified 22 flow triggers, things that reliably push us into the zone. Learning to stack as many of these as possible is one of the most reliable paths to success known to science. Today we're going to focus on just one, the perceived importance of tasks. How many of the things you do in a day are truly important? I know they all seem important. That's part of the problem. In episode 1 of the Foot-Brain Connection, we discussed how we live in a hyper-stimulatory environment. We're constantly bombarded with inputs that our brains never evolved to manage. This includes your to-do list and the millions of distractions vying for your attention every single day. They fragment your attention and they drive you directly away from flow. When you eliminate all the noise and just focus on what's truly important, the exact opposite happens. That's what occurred with the company founder with Lyme's disease. With only 2 hours a day available for work, he was forced to focus on only the most critically important tasks, which drove him deep into flow and massively increased his productivity. I've been experiencing a similar thing. I've studied high performance, productivity, and flow research for years, and I thought I'd implemented what I'd learned. But circumstances have forced me to take that to a whole new level. Years ago, one of my mentors, Dr. Demartini, taught me the skill of prioritizing, making sure that the most important task for the day was done first. I thought I got it then, but now I'm finally living what he taught me. Getting to the hospital every day was non-negotiable for me. So is getting this newsletter out to you every week. That means on the days when I'm writing, I'd get up, meditate, and immediately start writing. And then I'd head straight to the hospital. Nothing else happened until those two things were done. The result is that what used to take me all day or even multiple days now just pours out in a 3 to 4 hour block. When our brain truly recognizes the perceived importance of a task, it pulls out all the performance stops to make it happen. Your brainwaves drop from high beta, which is our normal waking awareness, to alpha and theta, enhancing calm, creativity. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, shuts down, reducing fear and worry. The frontal lobes and the default mode network reduce their activity, silencing our inner critic and any random distracting thoughts. Awareness of time fades, and we sharpen our focus on the present. A chemical cocktail of dopamine, noradrenaline, serotonin, anandamide, and endorphins drive enhanced focus, pattern recognition, and novel connections between multiple different areas. This is the optimal state for peak performance, whether it's writing a newsletter, adjusting a patient, or flying down a mountain on a snowboard. Checking my email each morning felt important. So did returning calls, consuming content, and putting out fires with my team. There's always fires, right? But my brain knew better. All of those things seemed important, but they can all be done in other ways, at other times, and by other people. I kind of knew that, certainly heard and read it many times before, but the last few months have forced me to finally actually really live it. This is not about neglecting tasks. It's about fundamentally restructuring your life for high performance. It's a useful filter to apply in your own life. I invite you to run this thought experiment and implement the results. Carve out some time when you're not going to be interrupted or distracted. I'd recommend at least an hour, and ask yourself this question. If I was forced to take 2 hours out of my daily schedule every day right now, what would I do differently? Don't rush this. Really allow the question to percolate. Don't just take the surface level answers, because initially your mind will come up with all the reasons why it's just not possible. Don't believe it. Your mind's bullshitting you. Sit with it. There is gold underneath the noise. Try to genuinely put yourself in the situation. Imagine how it would feel if that was real for you. My mind gave me all the reasons, excuses why it wasn't possible, until I was forced by circumstances to make it work. Write down what you come up with. You don't have to make all those changes at once. But if you really do this and you act on what you uncover, I promise your life's going to change. Another factor in this equation is understanding the chaos of expansion. Years ago, a business coach taught me this diagram. He called it the peak and the pit. It's something that I teach to every one of my new associates. usually when they feel overwhelmed about learning AK, the clinical technique that my clinic's known for, right? It can be pretty complex. Change is always difficult, and it almost never happens in a straight line. Every time we learn something new, we have to integrate that into our current understanding, and that just throws us into the pit. It's chaos. Suddenly feel like we don't know anything. Everything's uncertain. It feels like we've gone backwards. This happens every time that I attend a technique seminar, or I figure out something new in practice, I study a new course, or I implement a new system in my clinic. For the next few weeks, things can be chaotic. Appointments can run late. I'm trying new ways of doing things. It feels uncomfortable. But usually within a short space of time, integration happens. Mastery begins to build. And all of a sudden, we've found our new normal. And it's far superior to the old way of doing things. We've ascended out of the pit and up to the next peak, which is always higher than the previous one. This is how growth occurs. Of course, if we don't want to stagnate, we don't rest on the peak for too long. We just dive back into the pit again, and the whole cycle repeats itself. When you don't understand what's happening, this can be a punishing emotional roller coaster. But if you recognize it for what it is, the stress drops away. You become comfortable with the discomfort, knowing it's just inevitable growing pains, leading you to something way better. This is exactly what will happen if you implement the changes I've suggested to your daily task list. It will be worth it. I've seen this happen with clinics when it comes to implementing better balance orthotics. Typically, the doc starts wearing them and they absolutely love them. But then when it comes to taking the next step and implementing them in their clinic, it's like, we're really busy at the moment. We just implemented this other new thing. Whatever else is going on, whatever the story is, whatever the reason, no matter how valid or logical it seems, the truth is they're avoiding the uncomfortable chaos of the pit. And I get it, right? I've been there a million times myself. But really what's happening is that they're overemphasizing the pain of the pit and they're underestimating the rewards of the next peak. Again, this is not my opinion. This is simply neuroscience. We're hardwired to avoid pain more than we are to seek pleasure. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. But when it comes to business, it's a sabotage. I've seen docs take a year or more to make that leap, only to kick themselves when they end up realizing how easy it was, how great the improvement in their results is, and how happy their patients are. If you find yourself stuck in this place, like I said, no judgment, I've been there many times myself. But please reach out to me. I can help. Sometimes having someone who's already walked the path can help us move to the next peak as quickly and painlessly as possible. One last lesson that's been vital to surviving the last few months. When things get tough, double down on recovery. Often, under stress, our natural reaction is to reach for feel-good quick fixes or distractions, things like alcohol, sugar, binging on Netflix, or even just throwing ourselves into the busyness of work. I'll admit, I'm not immune to this. My whiskey collection copped quite a beating in the early stages of this whole crisis. However, that's not a recipe for long-term performance under stress. What might work for a week isn't going to work for months. See, the flow cycle has 4 distinct stages: struggle, release, flow, and recovery. It doesn't happen, it can't work without all 4 stages. First comes struggle. For example, sitting and staring at a blank screen, trying to connect the dots into a coherent newsletter. Then comes the release. This is where we step away and let the unconscious work its magic. It needs to be something that engages our mind, but not too much. An activity like watching TV doesn't work, it's too distracting. For me, a workout and then a sauna is usually the perfect combination. Going for a walk often does the trick too. Then comes flow. You'd be amazed how many of these newsletters have been birthed in the sauna. Often I'll come home dripping because the sauna's just across the road from my house, and I immediately have to sit down at my computer, soaked in sweat, and just let the words flow out, even before I jump in the shower. Finally, we need recovery. We can't live in flow. All that potent neurochemistry is expensive, and the brain requires time to rebuild it. That's what the recovery phase is for. We need to recharge for the next cycle. Full transparency, here's the readout from my Oura ring. I've been maintaining my commitment to sleep and exercise, but there's no denying that the last few months have been stressful. When the pressure really hits, sleep, exercise, and nutrition are often the first things we cut back on. It just feels like we don't have the time to focus on them. I understand, but I've learned this is a mistake. In fact, under stress is the exact time when we need to double down on these basics, even if our mind is screaming otherwise. Our families, our patients, and the world needs us at our best. And there's no way we can deliver that if we're not looking after our own needs. It's not selfish. It's serving at the highest level we're capable of. Okay, so one other quick thing. I just returned from Aspen, where I presented at the Ski for Wally event. I taught a series of reflexes that I've developed for integrating the fascial system and movement patterns throughout the entire body. It went down really well. Participants were amazed by the postural changes that were immediately produced by using these reflexes. I've shared a few of them in the past, but this is the first time I've taught it as a whole system. I'm thinking about recording this information as a course for our Better Balance Orthotics practitioners. It goes hand in hand with our orthotics, and it really enhances their effects. If that's something that would be interesting to you, shoot me an email and I'll add you to the list to notify you when it's ready. All right, thanks. Have a great week.